Black woman. Beautiful, powerful, resilient female of African descent with skin kissed by the sun. Conversation. A talk, especially an informal one between two or more people in which news and ideas are exchanged. We love being Black women. Black women are ambitious. Black women are confident. Black women are diligent. We are tenacious. We walk out of our houses put together. We are many shades and personalities of fabulous. But we as Black women don't talk about our dilemmas, current events, and what's going on every day that affects us. So we created this podcast as a way to laugh together, cry together, and have an open conversation about life as Black women.
Oh, that's deep. Black Women Conversations.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Janine.
I just realized when I was listening to our last episode that we never introduced ourselves to the people.
Nope, we didn't.
You know what? We're sorry. So here it is. I'm Janine, and I work in marketing for media companies.
I practice obstetrics and gynecology and also high-risk obstetrics.
That means that she's your doctor's doctor. So I am married and to my wonderful husband, Ken. He's amazing. And I have a fur baby named Layla, but we call her Peanut because she looks like a little peanut. She's a cute little thing. And I live in the DMV and I'm enjoying life in every moment that I'm living it.
Well, I'm in Houston and it's hot here. Just ridiculously hot. I am married to James and we've been married for 4 years now. We have a son named Harrison who is uber cute, but super active, super energetic. And we also have a fur baby named Sophie.
And just for the side note, Harrison is the most adorable, cute as a button little baby boy ever. You hear me? Super adorable. Like, wait for Harrison on the magazine covers. Just saying.
I think he looks just like me. So thank you, girl.
Oh.
Although most people says he looks like my husband.
Okay, so that you know, Nicole and I met in our freshman year of college, which was uber long ago, but we will pretend like it was yesterday, right, Nicole?
Oh, yes. We're 22, honey. We just finished.
Just yesterday.
Yep. So we met at Xavier University of Louisiana.
Shout out to Xavier.
Yay, Xavier, right.
And then Janine decided that she didn't want to do medicine anymore. So because she likes to talk, so she changed to marketing and journalism.
Which makes her a media guru.
But Nicole, she decided that, why are we talking about ourselves in third person? Sounds crazy, but hey, we are who we are. So Nicole decided that she wanted to be a super doctor. So she then went on to get, double board certified? Nicole, tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think that I'm even equipped to explain the level of education that you have.
It's not that big a deal. I happened to go to Tulane School of Medicine, the Tulane, and did the dual degree program with my master's in public health at the same time as my medical doctorate. And then I went to University of Mississippi and got my training for OBGYN and then stayed there for fellowship in maternal fetal medicine.
As I said, she's a super doctor. She would be your doctor's doctor. Okay, you hear me? So Nicole and I, we like to chit chat. There are days that we stay on the phone, literally, hey girl, okay, hold on while we go do A, B, and C. And then we just come back to the phone. So we just like to chit chat. So anything that we see that affects our life, we like to talk about it. So we figured that we would share with you all too. How has your week been? I feel like I talk to you every day, but I haven't actually checked in to see how your week has been.
Yes, my week has been rough. I have been, in clinic, dealing with the coronavirus, and people are still silly. People still don't want to wear masks, although Houston is on the rise. I don't know why. People are foolish.
What is their explanation? Do you ever ask, why don't you want to wear a mask?
Yes. The same people that don't want to wear masks, they don't want to wear condoms either. So, which is why they're coming to see me. Just saying. No, but people say that it's their right not to wear a mask and they're not afraid of coronavirus. People think that it's some, politicized ploy by, certain parties. So I don't get it. To me, if there's something that's bad going on in the U.S. that could potentially kill you or your loved ones, it wouldn't matter if it's true or not. People go buy water when 1999 came, everybody went and bought water, right?
Correct.
So everyone thought, oh, the end of the world is coming. Now, most people knew the end of the world was not coming, right? Because we would have all went out and did something like stupid, crazy, or we would have all been in church. Okay?
Right.
One extreme or the other. But everybody went and bought water because they were scared. And we knew nothing was going to happen. We woke up that next morning like, it's 2000. We're still alive. But for some reason, people do not do that with coronavirus. And we see the numbers going up. I don't know. Most people, because they haven't been directly affected or they don't know somebody directly that has gotten really sick, then they're like, okay, it's nothing. Or they know people who have it or had it and they haven't gotten really sick. They had a little cough.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not really afraid.
But people don't know how it's going to affect them. And here's the thing. If I see physical evidence that people are dying, whether it's me or someone across the country, I'm just going to err on the side of safety, and yeah, I'll wear a mask. But again, it's funny that you bring up 1999 because do you remember people were like, oh my goodness, your computer is going to explode and let's go out, like you said, and buy a bunch of water. One, not their computer exploded. And two, what was water actually going to do for us should the world end?
I guess it would keep you I guess people thought the end of the world, everything was going to shut down around them, right? The grocery stores are not going to be open. So we need water because you can't live without water. So you got to have a couple weeks worth. You can starve and live without food for about 4 or 5 days, but water, you got to have that. You got to have that after about 3 days. So they're stocking up on that because, the end of the world's going to come. Everything is going to come crashing down around us. And we're going to pitch tents and we're not going to have running water. So we're going to have water. And then within that week, the U.S. will figure out how to get us more water. I don't know.
Oh my
I don't know
goodness.
what people are thinking.
I mean, if we had to count on the U.S. to determine something, then, Lord, help us all. So, let's get into what's on our timeline. So I found this really interesting article. As we all know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but we're also in the middle of probably one of the most racially charged environments in my lifetime, I would say. But it's interesting because we have these pop-out stories of hope and humanity and people making change. And it's really interesting, you see one positive moment and it kind of turns really quickly. And this story kind of gave me that thought, we've gotten to the point where we can actually have positive dialogue about race. Here's a story about how there was a glimmer of hope and then all of a sudden it just turned. So in Chicago, police board president Guion Foreman, and I'm probably pronouncing his name incorrectly, so forgive me, praised the police of Chicago for their restraint during protests. We're in a really racially charged environment right now. So the relationship between black and brown people is probably not the best. So President Foreman basically said he was commending the police for exercising restraint and what turned into a not so peaceful protest. So a few days later, he was passing a protest on his way home and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Subsequently, the president of the police board was struck by the police. And I say struck because in his statement, he says, I indeed was one of several individuals physically hit and struck by Chicago police. So basically, the police clashed with the protesters. He was there, not participating in this said protest. And because he was a black man in an environment where it was maybe not so peaceful on his way home, he, who had just commended the police, the president of the police board, experienced police brutality.
You know what? That's sort of a good thing that it happened to him. When he put out that statement, he should have shut up. He should have never said what he said. No. Okay. There's always that one person that's like, oh, well, they're doing such a good job. And, I think that we might be overreacting, or sometimes we as black people can be too sensitive and we need to understand where the police are coming from. No, people are being profiled every day. And now he knows what it feels like to be profiled as a black man in America. So now he's experienced it. Now what does he have to say now? I'm waiting. So I saw his comments in the article he made a little proper statement about, oh yes, he was, caught up in the protest. And I bet he's thinking if the protest would have never happened, he would have never had to get caught up in the situation. And so he's probably in his mind justifying the actions of these police officers, even though he's been profiled. But again, Janine, we as Black people, don't we justify actions a lot? We try to explain away actions of other people, and not just white people. We explain away actions of other people. As women, we explain away actions of the men we're in relationships with. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have done it like this, or, oh, he just had a bad day. We explain away things that we shouldn't explain away. And no matter what you did in that situation, it doesn't justify that treatment. So yes, I think that he probably understands a little bit more now, but in his head, I bet he's still trying to make excuses.
And I wonder if it's because of the position that he holds.
Of course it is.
It's difficult to turn against what will pay you, what is your livelihood. We've seen it time and time again where people are afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of the fact that, at the end of the day, they still have to feed their family and take care of themselves. But this also reminds me of the story of Omar Jimenez. And Omar Jimenez, I don't know if you are aware, is the CNN reporter who was arrested live on television as he was reporting at a protest for George Floyd. And I remember he made mention of it on Don Lemon. And he said, he knew, he had faith that that CNN would call and, make intercede on his behalf, right? And he said, but the fear was that his mom, his Black mother, was concerned that she had just watched her son live on television for the last time because she was unsure. And so many Black mothers have to live with being unsure of what's going to happen. And this particular situation with President Foreman is one of those situations. Thank God he was President Foreman. And while he was just beaten, so to speak, and please see my air quotes, he was just beaten by the police and he wasn't killed. Is that supposed to be the light at the end of the tunnel?
I bet that is his light at the end of the tunnel. But I still think it probably put in perspective for him. Just like Omar, my husband and I were actually laying in bed. That happened at like 5:15 in the morning. And I remember we were watching it and my husband said, this dude is getting arrested and he's taping live. And I said, this has to be a joke. Like, I didn't even think it was serious because he has a CNN tag on. He's recording. He has a crew. It's not like he's recording with his iPhone. So he has a whole camera crew around him and he still got arrested. So we were in disbelief watching it. So I know he must have been in disbelief, but he had faith that CNN would come through for him. And, the interesting thing is he tried to make very light of the situation and CNN and their commentators were like, basically, oh, hell no. Correct. We are making a commercial out of this. We are going to put this on blast. This is not going to happen. And this is our way of showing our viewers that Black Lives Matter and we are going to take advantage of this situation. And I remember he was trying to justify it at that point, probably like the police president was trying to justify it. Yeah. And another thing you said, as a Black mother, his mother was concerned. Like, I look at my child every day and he's one and think to myself, okay, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to teach him how to behave? Because my husband, his, prim and proper, classical music loving, minister self, I don't know if he's going to have the real come to Jesus with our son that he needs in order, especially now that we're in Texas, for him to be okay in America as a teenager and going forward.
Wow. I can't even imagine, Nicole. Hats off to you and your husband, because it should be a course taught on how to prepare your Black child for the world.
that's a good idea. Maybe somebody listening will be like, aha, that's a aha moment. And Janine is like, okay, pay me my coins for giving you that idea, please. Okay. So let's talk through a situation. So I have a situation that's from a friend of a friend, okay? Because I can't even say this mess would be from a friend of mine. So a friend of a friend who is now 32 weeks pregnant said she faced racism, air quotes, big air quotes, by black officers and never by white officers, sort of like the president of the board that you were talking about. Ugh. And the white officers have always been polite. She actually never faced any racist remarks or acts until she was about 28 years old, 35 now. So should she discuss racism with her future child or wait until he or she is an adult? She doesn't know what she's having yet. She doesn't want to cause unnecessary stress by discussing such serious issues early on if she doesn't have to. So what do you think, Janine? Like, are we overreacting? Like, is this something that we should talk about when our kids are about to leave the nest and not necessarily, be in the nest?
I would just like to point out that this is probably reason number 5,772 that I don't have children, because there are issues like this that would keep me up at night. I mean, for goodness sake, they keep me up at night about myself, and I'm not responsible for another human being. But having said that, I think that my experience is probably not so unique. I think that I have an experience that's very similar to a lot of African American women. I was raised in an environment where there were a lot of rooms where I was the only African American, let alone African American woman, right? So my experience isn't necessarily one of isolation, but I think that it caused me to learn what race was early, and it caused me to learn what racism was early. And I think that I probably would have rather learned the concept from my parents. And I say that because my introduction to racism was 5 years old, and I'm in, my kindergarten class with a crush on a little boy, and he informed me that he couldn't be my, kindergarten boyfriend anymore, because if we had children, then they would come out mentally challenged because he was white and I was black. And so now I go home with a lot of questions to my parents about what is race, and I don't even understand the word. All I know is that the little boy that I like is white and I'm black, and now my parents have to explain to me race and prejudice and racism, and I'm 5. Had they explained it to me beforehand, I might have been better prepared, but my 5-year-old self was devastated because now I feel like something is wrong with me. And at 5, you can't really understand why someone would not like you for the color of your skin unless you've been taught it.
So you think that your parents should have had that conversation before you turned 5?
I think they should have had the conversation before I was in an environment where I could have potentially experienced racism. So for me, that was 5. For other children, it might be 15. For someone, it might be adulthood. But for me, that was 5. Being the only black child in my kindergarten class. Actually, I don't know that I was the only. There might have been another one, but the only black girl I am very sure of in my kindergarten class, that's a thing. So now I have to understand what racism is, because the same way that this little boy was taught race, my parents should have taught me about race prior to. That's how I feel, because I felt like I was ill-equipped to have even a conversation because I didn't know what race was. All I knew was we are all kindergarten classmates. But racism is taught from birth. So
yeah, it is.
So we as black people are often behind because we don't, the whole concept of I don't see race, that's not true. People see race, hence why it's a social construct. You're brown, your skin is brown, and that makes you quote unquote black person or a brown person, and people who are white people, as opposed to us just being people. So we can't not see race. In theory, yes, it makes sense. In reality, it does not make sense. So the same way that racism is taught very early, I think that we should teach our children what race is before they learn what racism is, and how it relates to them, and how it could potentially affect their life. If that's at kindergarten, great. If it's at 10, even better. If it's when you're grown, even better. It just means that our world has gotten better. But I don't think that you can bury your head in the sand and expect someone else to teach your child what race and racism is.
To your parents' point, and in defense of them, because
okay,
I know that they're excellent creatures. I would never in my mind think my child at 5 who's going off to the first grade, I need to have that talk at 4 because she's going to come across some little ignorant turds that are going to blow her mind in kindergarten or first grade. I would never, even as a parent now, when you said that, I'm thinking of my child like, wait a minute, 5? Oh, I need to get myself together. Because you don't expect your child to experience racism that early. And so, to your parents, I don't blame them for not talking to you about skin color or racism and hoping that you just see that people are different and have different colors and you understand they have different colors, but you don't understand, the negative thought process that some have about those different hues. So I don't know if until we had this conversation now, I was not thinking, oh, I need to talk to Harrison by age 5. And if you say that, the time is before people are actually going to experience racism, I mean, well, we need to be having talks with kids in the womb. Sure. As a healthcare professional, I've seen racism and checked racism quite a few times from birth. It reminds me of a time when we were doing circumcisions on little boys, right? And usually some moms say, I don't want my baby to have the pacifier. Don't give my baby a pacifier, okay? Now, what we should be saying is, hey, during these procedures, we may give your child a pacifier to soothe him, not her, because hers don't get circumcision. Not in the U.S. anyway.
Right.
But we're going to give the baby a pacifier, just for a few minutes to soothe him. And we put the little sweeties on the pacifier. Are you okay with that? Right? Instead, if the mom says, don't give my baby a pacifier, which a lot of moms do, then that means that the child doesn't get the sweeties, right? And sweeties is just like sugar water, okay? Right. The baby loves sweeties. They love it. We doing those little circumcisions and you put those sweetie drops on the tongue and they just relax. They love it. So I see that even the moms that are okay with the pacifier, the little black children don't get the sweeties as much. And I'll walk in and I'll say, give that baby some sweeties. I have no idea. I don't know if they're so distracted that they're in the zone and they don't give sweeties. But I've seen it. I have seen a lot of little black children, be deprived of the sweeties. So if you're talking about, is it because the child is black? I can't say it's only because the child is black, but I do see it more often in little black babies than in little white babies. Mm. So before I sent Harrison down to the nursery, my doctor was a good friend, so I knew that she was going to do that. But I was like, make sure you give him all the sweeties he needs down there while he's getting this little penile procedure, okay? Aww. Because I don't want him to be uncomfortable. I want him to be as comfortable as possible. But yeah, that kind of stuff happens. So I don't know, should I have okay, Harrison, they may not give you the sweeties and this is a form of discrimination talk,
Well, that's the thing. You never know. It's like learning to teach your kids when to have the birds and the bees conversation. So you just kind of have to pick and lay the groundwork as you see fit and as you think that they can understand and comprehend. It's hard. It's hard to even think of on your own sometimes, let alone trying to figure out how to explain it to a child.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think that we both agree that definitely the conversation needs to be had sometime early. And this, friend of a friend Now, I reminded this friend of a friend, Tamir Rice was 12 years old running through the park with a toy gun. So, and I don't know if his parents had the conversation or not. But it's something to think about. Like, if you're trying to wait until your child is almost an adult, it may be really too late. I mean, Tamir Rice, God bless his soul, is now dead. And he was 12. And there's so many examples of things like that happen across the U.S. So I definitely think that you got to have the conversation. And to your point, as early as possible, as early as you think that they're going to experience racism. Now, as Tamir Rice's mother, again, I don't know if I would have thought my child would be shot down at age 12.
But even at age 20 or 26 or 30 or 40, you don't expect that someone is going to get shot down. I would be interested to know, what is the rationale behind why she thinks that her child would not need to know about race because she didn't experience it as a child?
Right.
But
she
why
didn't
did she feel
it
that
as a
way?
child.
But why does she feel that she didn't experience it? What is behind that?
Well, her thing was, she lived in an upper class neighborhood. She went to private schools. So for her, she thinks that perhaps people are being discriminated against or mistreated because they aren't educated, or people always overreact. If you follow commands and follow directions, if the police tell you to step out of the car, you step out of the car. If the police tell you to produce your license and registration, you produce your license and registration. And then maybe those things would not have happened. And so for her, it's more of this must be a poor Black situation and a poor Black issue, an uneducated issue, and not just an overall Black issue.
So that's a different scenario, though. So as I said to you earlier, I experienced racism, or what I would consider racial prejudice, at 5, the first time that I can remember. I was raised in an upper middle class neighborhood, and I went to one of the most prestigious high schools that you could imagine. I didn't really want for anything. So to say that this is an issue that only affects poor, quote unquote, poor Black people is an asinine idea, to be very honest with you. I mean, before a cop sees you, they make an assessment about you in seconds. They don't know what your financial background is or your educational background is. How would they know that? All they can see is the color of your skin and the things that you have on or around you. Other than that, what does your finance have anything to do with whether the police are going to attack you or assault you or not? I don't understand the correlation.
Correct. And, and for her, when she brought up this conversation, and it just in small talk, it wasn't, because we shut that education thing down altogether. I'm a doctor and I get discriminated against still on the daily. And I've faced racism, throughout my life. Now, I was not raised in this affluent, neighborhood. But the other people in the room were. So they were like, wait a minute. These things happen to me too. So, that was shut down, very, very, quickly. But the thing that lingered was, about the children and when to intervene. And now to your point, when do you intervene for a girl versus a boy?
Ooh.
And are those conversations different?
Wow.
Because she doesn't know what she's having, right?
Right.
She has no idea.
First of all, I never even thought about the difference, because in my mind, racism is racism. And I don't even know that there is a difference. I know that the media will, in recent time, I should say, the media will highlight the death of an African-American male more so than an African-American female. But I don't know that the rates of African-American males being killed by police brutality are any fewer than they are about African-American females. It's just what we're exposed to. So I think that the conversation is different. It is 100% different for a Black male as it is a Black female, but I don't know what that looks like. I think that with a Black female, you have to include, the concept of your sexuality, unfortunately, early. You have to include, protecting your personal space, So I think that that's a part of a conversation with a female that you might not have to have with your son. But then with your son, you have to have the conversation of how can you be unthreatening, and how is it that you can disarm people before you even open your mouth and say anything to them. That's a conversation that is hard. It's crazy to think that before you even open your mouth, you have to somehow present yourself as an unthreatening person or unthreatening being. That's difficult. Again, I don't have kids, but I look at my husband, he's 6 foot plus. He's a big black man. And before he even opens his mouth, how does he disarm people so that they're not immediately threatened by his stature? How does he do that? Now, when he opens his mouth and has a conversation with you and he's super articulate, now everyone is disarmed. But before you even get to the conversation, with your initial 5-second interaction with the police, that could be 5 seconds too late.
But even when we're not talking about the police, even in society in general, I think that conversation still has to hold truth for Black women, because some people look at us, even if we're articulate, if we're in a meeting and we're questioning the other person in the meeting, it's like, who gave you the authority to question, girl? You know, I've actually been called. So in Indianapolis, where I came from, I was basically the division director there. And I'm having a meeting with one of the pediatric surgeons. And he's talking to me about how I counsel patients about C-section versus vaginal delivery for gastroschisis. So he's talking to me because he did a surgery that ended up having some complications on this little baby that had a gastroschisis. That's when the bowel is outside. The small intestines are outside of the body, basically. And you have to basically surgically correct them and put them back in over time. So he had some complications. And so his thing was, oh, you should have counseled the patient that she needed a C-section. And we need to meet about this. Here's the data to support it, right? But his data didn't support it. His data actually supported the guidelines, which is a vaginal delivery is not a contraindication and should actually be encouraged for gastroschisis unless there's other things going on, you know, a giant gastroschisis that involves the liver, or, you know, other anomalies or other reasons that the baby may not survive the vaginal delivery process. And so his data is supporting what I'm saying. And so I'm in the meeting with the internal medicine, not internal medicine, who was in that meeting? Pediatric medicine crew, basically. Neonatologist, pediatrician, NICU nurse, OBGYN, OB nurse, and the nurse manager. And him. And so he's talking to me about his data. And I actually said, well, actually, according to your own data, this proves that these women should be offered a vaginal delivery. And he said, well, girl, I've been practicing since X, Y, and Z year. And I said, oh yeah. I said, I trained in Mississippi, so I know all about this. And, it doesn't matter how long you've been practicing. The guidelines are the guidelines and the standards are the standards for a reason. And because you've been practicing for X, Y, and Z year, I understand that your information may be a little dated, but here we're going to follow the guidelines. But to my point, he had the audacity to say, girl, I'm a whole doctor and the division director.
But they will always see you as a little black
girl. They try it. And so that conversation, I think, basically how we can come across as not being the angry black woman in the room, and how it doesn't matter how we're perceived, we still have to stand in our own power, needs to be had with our daughters too. And so it is the art of being pristine and polite and a Southern belle and smart at the same time, and non-threatening for both, you know, girls in that respect, but non-threatening for our boys too, is a real thing.
It's a real challenging thing. I mean, think about it. We haven't even scratched the surface of what you have to explain to your children or when to even explain it. Because do you explain it when you're not sure if they quite understand so that you lay the groundwork, or do you wait and have them experience it and bring it to you and then you try to explain it to them then? When? I
think you have to constantly explain it. It's like constantly having the talk. My sister and I used to be upset with my mom because she used to have the sex talk all the time. And she used to have different scenarios and say, well, what are you going to say when he says this? And what are you going to say when he does this? And we used to be so annoyed by that. But now that I am an adult, I realized why she was doing that. Like, she was trying to constantly remind us not to have our guard down. And I think when we're talking about racism in America, yeah, I do think you have to have that conversation really early at like ages 3 or 5, and then have it again when they're 10, and then have it again when they're, 12 or 13 and going through puberty. So I think that it has to be constant.
Starting at age 5.
See, I still don't know about that age 5. That's scary to even think about that young. I guess it depends on the child and the environment, like you said, though.
Yeah, very true. If you'd like to tell us what you think, when do you talk to your kids about race relations and racism? Nicole, where are they emailing us?
Email us at ohthat'sdeep@gmail.com.
So, a friend of a friend, giant air quotes. So, I'm a middle-aged African-American woman. Let's just say I was born before the internet, who was married to an Irish Catholic man. I'm from Philadelphia, and my husband is from Stroudsburg, PA, a small town outside of the Poconos. I say this because prior to our meeting in the PA National Guard, my husband had rarely encountered African Americans outside of what he saw on television or at the local grocery store. As I said, we met in the Pennsylvania National Guard, and we married in 2010. Outside of our initial conversations, when we met and the obligatory conversations with one another's parents, we haven't really discussed race until recently. With everything that's going on, my husband has been extremely supportive and has even gone as far to research ways to explain racism to our 3 beautiful children, all under the age of 10. My husband is an amazing provider for our family, and he is loving and supportive to me and our children. However, I'm not sure that I want to stay married. I recently received orders to deploy, and when I went to go pull my duffel and trunk from our attic, I found some letters that my husband had received when he was deployed in Afghanistan. In the letters, my husband's friend referred to me as his N-word whore and said that I'm sure he couldn't wait to get home to have me, quote, slaving in the kitchen. I brought this to my husband's attention after several weeks of contemplation. However, my husband continues to insist that he's not racist, and he's learned since then. I can't understand why my husband doesn't see that this is a big issue, and why he can't understand why I'm upset that he continues to be friends with this man. I mean, for goodness sakes, this man has been in our home and has watched our children. I truly love my husband, I really do, but I'm not sure that I can continue this marriage if he continues to be friends with this man.
Okay, that shouldn't even be a question. So, if I tell my husband, I don't like that friend, I don't want this person at my house anymore, that's a wrap. That's all it should take. Your husband should be able to say, okay, I understand. I won't talk to this person anymore. They won't be welcome in our house. We're not friends anymore. Like, I don't understand if you have somebody that is going to offend your mate, they're out of there. But if your friend was so comfortable with putting that in writing, he didn't just tell you, he put this in writing. Okay. So it is eternally etched somewhere. There's a problem with that. That means that your husband has been talking to his friend about this. So they've been small talking about you and things that you do for him. Oh yeah, I can't wait to, you can't wait to get her slaving in the kitchen. Your little N-word, That means that you've been having some small talk, like I'm like some aphrodisiac and you married me to be your like permanent concubine. But realistically, you're thinking, this is just some little, black whore that I married. That's a problem. I would check my husband.
I agree. And the first thing that I thought was, you have to be very confident in yourself to know that your husband is not a racist, right? Or to not assume that your husband is a racist. However, the reality is people do change. There are probably things that I said that, have been offensive in the past, or that were in ill will, I guess, as a child or as a teenager. People are evil. You know, when you're in high school, things are evil. You know, people are evil. And oftentimes, you know, when you're in stressful environments, and I'm going to say stressful environments because we assume that this is, you know, deployment was stressful. You can say things that might not necessarily, or entertain things that might not necessarily be in your natural character, right? But then you start getting into excuses. So if you make an excuse for the friend, then you make an excuse for the husband. And you don't know what their conversation has been in the past. You don't know what they've said to each other. Do you trust your husband and just assume that he is telling you the truth and he has your best interest at heart because he's never displayed otherwise? And just assume that he has a friend that's just a jerk? Or do you delve deeper into it and ask and find, well, what's the other side of the letter say? Do you ever know? Is it ever going to come out? And if this person has never displayed racist behavior to you prior to this, do you just throw them out with the bathwater? What do you do?
I wish people could see my face right now. I wish people could see my face right now.
Let me describe Nicole's face. Nicole's face is like perplexed and frustrated and surprised and angry and a bunch of like emotions all jumbled up as she covers her face and tries to not blurt out what she has to say in her head. Go ahead, Nicole.
Because I'm trying to think through this to process it. So let's backtrack. Okay, they have kids. How long have they been married again?
Since 2010.
So 10 years they've been married. Mm-hmm. They have 2 children together.
3.
He was 3. And he was deployed. Obviously, if somebody's writing him letters, that other person's not deployed, right?
Correct.
The other person is sitting in their home in a non-stressful environment and writing the letter. So whether her husband is in a stressful environment doesn't explain the words of the friend that's sitting at home on his comfortable sofa writing this letter. He's not in distress and he's using racist tone. So your husband may, and I don't even think that's an excuse that he accepts it because he's in a stressful environment, because that's not funny. That's not entertaining. So let's separate the husband for a second.
Okay.
So the friend is not in a stressful environment. The friend obviously feels comfortable putting these words in writing. So that means that he's tested the words before, probably face to face, and he knows that these words are going to be okay. All right. So he puts the words in writing and sends them overseas, right? Etched for all the world to see if they find it. Then your husband doesn't get offended. Now back to the husband. Doesn't get offended. Keeps the words with him, right? All this time. Folds it up neatly in his pocket. Cherishing these words and keeping these words with them. And he's trying to make excuses for it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Well, hell yes. Because eventually it's going to come out. Eventually racism will rear its head. Eventually. Now understand that this is a difficult situation. She's been married to this man for a decade. She has 3 beautiful children by this man. And what does she tell her children? I get that. But they're going to have to go through some serious counseling to get to the bottom of this, to figure out what's really in her husband's heart as to why he doesn't feel okay erasing this friendship. Because that's not only racist comments towards the wife, it's racist comments towards the children as well, because those are black children. Okay. Right. So if you have any tinge of black, even if you're passe blanc, as we say in the South, you're still black. Okay. You're still black and your children are black. So that means that this friend doesn't like his children. I have a problem with you not trying to defend at least your children and what they are. So I have my own opinion about that. I understand that in marriage, you have to accept some things and work through some things. I get it, but that's going to be a big one to work through. So I understand your friend of a friend. See, your friend of a friend probably would be my friend because me and her are thinking alike, right? I can't deal with it. I'm not going to put up with it. I'm a bounce. So we're on the same page. So me and your friend of a friend can be friends.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not saying that I would stay because you never know what you're going to do until you're in the situation, right? So
Sure.
I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you cannot necessarily assume that the husband is racist. I take a couple of things into consideration. One, it's likely that the person, a friend, is probably in the military. They probably have a camaraderie and a brotherhood that we probably cannot even understand or conceptualize being civilians. So let's just say that. Pause. Okay. Nicole's face is saying, I don't care what kind of brotherhood they have. Okay. So the second thing is, we don't know how the husband responded. We don't know if he defended his wife, if he defended his kids. We don't know any of that, right? We don't have that information. So we're just going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then 3, I will say this. Birds of a feather often flock together. However, there are times where, there's a group of people and 4 of the 5 seem to be one way. And then there's always that wild card. And they've just been a part of the group for so many years, so you kind of just keep them around. It happens. I mean, it happens with men as they get, married, and then they have that one single friend that's still out there wilding, doing anything and everything, but it's their friend. I don't know. I don't know that you throw, have we known this friend longer than we've known the wife?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Think about it. That one black cop who people are like, oh, I didn't realize that one of them was black. In the George Floyd case, right? His excuse, which sounds very much so like this one, is he was just basically going with the flow. This was the culture of the police department there. So when you're in it, you do as they do. Not an excuse. It's not an excuse. He's arrested with the rest of his buddies. It is not an excuse. And we have to stop standing by allowing a culture that's a negative culture to keep being passed down from person to person, year after year, decade after decade, just because that was a culture. It's time to change the culture. So yes, I understand that military, like the police force, have this camaraderie, and you don't want to be this person that's like the outcast of the group. I get that. But right is right and wrong is wrong. And you have to have standards at some point in your life. There has to be something that tells you, okay, this is where the buck stops. It stops right here. I'm not going any further. That is, out of line. And if you're married to a black woman, the racist comments should be where it stops. So I don't get it. And she's not calling her husband racist in the scenario that you pointed out. Now, I said what I said. And for me, he must have some type of underlying racism himself if he can't get rid of that friendship. So the only thing that makes it an issue is that he can't get rid of the friendship. That's her issue. Her issue is not that he can't say that, he's not a racist, or he can't say that his friend is not a racist. She just wants him to get rid of the friend because there's no way to know. This person is around my kids. I don't want him around. And her husband is saying he won't do it. Maybe I'm tripping, but I don't excuse it.
I think that you're right. I mean, when you break it down to that, if I felt uncomfortable with one of my husband's friends and he insisted on holding on to the friend, I would have a problem with that. So at the end of the day, if your husband's friend is making you uncomfortable and your husband is not willing to get rid of that friend, there's some conversation that needs to be had as to where you stand, and does he prioritize you and your marriage more, or does he prioritize the friendship more? And in this particular case, they can't coincide. Like, they can't be prioritized at the same level. They have to, one is making the other one is hindering the other. So
I would love to hear what the listeners think, because I know that there are some women out there that are married to white men. And I know that they're probably cringing like I'm cringing, clutching my pearls, like, oh my God. And they're probably having this conversation with their husbands, like, I wish you would not get rid of this friend.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, you know, there are some Black women that are married to some super amazing white men who are on the front lines of the Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, civil rights. And I think that, you know, this is one specific instance. And I don't, and let me be clear, I don't think that her husband is a racist. I would not accuse anyone of being a racist unless I knew. So I don't think that her husband is a racist. However, I think that her husband has some reckoning to do with his friendship. And I think that he has some reckoning to do with where he stands and what he wants to do and how he wants to move forward. If he wants to move forward as a single man or if he wants to move forward with his marriage.
Absolutely. He's either going to get on the boat or get off. Let's talk about what we learned new this week.
So, Nicole, this week I learned that there are some states that are actually making masks optional for minorities because they feel like it presents a threat to minorities that's greater than the threat of COVID. The mask that is supposed to save your life is causing a threat to your life.
I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to tell you what I learned new.
Okay.
If you're in the state of Oregon, you better wear a mask, okay? Black people are dying from COVID-19. This is not an option. I understand they're giving you a pass, but you need to wear a mask. So what I learned is there are some fabulous online courses in marketing and in stock investing and a whole bunch of other things that you can get. And if you are African American, they give it to you at a discounted rate. I thought that was awesome, and I am personally going to take advantage of the stock courses, and I'm going to take advantage of some real estate courses too, so I can learn how to invest in real estate.
That's your next venture?
That is my next venture. I have always wanted to learn about real estate and investing, so I am definitely, knowledge is power, so I am going to do it.
Nicole Plenty flips houses. That's the next show.
Your motivation for the week. Don't let anybody stop your melanated shine. Know your worth and demand what you deserve. Until we meet again,
pray, work, slay,
and show off your melanated excellence.
Oh, That's Deep. Black Women Conversations is produced and hosted by Nicole Lee Plenty and Janine Brunson Johnson. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find Oh, That's Deep Black Women Conversations on Facebook and IG at Oh, That's Deep BWC. Oh, That's Deep Black Women Conversations is a 5 Times Media production.